Mm,
Okay.
okay. I take this moment to tell you, I told you yesterday, but I have to start to teach at 2, so I will not be there for a while.
Okay. So we are live now.
Oh, okay, great.
Welcome to the second day of the Interior Ecologies Symposium. Yesterday we had a wide collection of amazing presentations, which really helped us rethink the way that we think about porosity and interiority in terms of contemporary architectural practices. Again, my name is Carmen Leal Heinz, and I am a writer and a researcher based in Madrid at the Institute for Postnatural Studies. And we've had the pleasure of collaborating with Maia, the Master of Arts in Architecture at HED Geneva, in developing a master's program and also this symposium. And this is the second day of the symposium that we have developed in collaboration with Javier Fernandez Contreras and Roberto Zacan, and we're extremely happy to be here today. So for our session in the morning, we will have Sawako Bolsh, who is a student currently completing their master's in the Maia thesis program, who is working with Gabriel Alonso from the Institute. And the title of their talk is Tea House on Mars, Tea Ceremony as a Counter-Narrative of the Terraforming Project. So with this, I will open it up to Sawako, and thank you to everyone who's watching on YouTube and who can be with us today. Hello, Sawako. Hi. I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello. Nice to see you. How are you?
Good.
Fantastic.
How are you?
Very well, yes. So I have just introduced you to our YouTube watchers, the title of your presentation. So with this, I will open it up to you. And if you have any questions or technical needs, Roberto and I are here.
Okay.
No problem.
Oh, she's mute. You're mute again.
I can start. Okay.
Yes. Sorry, that was unclear, but go ahead.
And share my screen.
Good morning. Today I'll present my thesis research titled Tea House on Mars, Tea Ceremony as a Counter-Narrative of the Terraforming Project. This research began by questioning our current approaches to Mars habitation and exploring alternative ways of thinking about human presence on Mars. Current visions of Mars habitation focus on transformation and control. Through this thesis, we'll explore an alternative approach through the Japanese tea ceremony, suggesting new ways of engaging with Mars's environment. When we think about living on Mars today, most proposals focus on terraforming, making Mars more like Earth. The idea is to transform the entire planet, warming it up to melt the ice, creating a thicker atmosphere, and eventually making it suitable for Earth-like life. These approaches aim to remake Mars in Earth's image. These visions translate into massive engineering projects, giant domes, artificial environments, and large-scale climate modification. While these ideas are technologically ambitious, they reveal something important. We are still thinking about Mars as a resource to be conquered, rather than a planet with its own character. By focusing so much on transforming Mars, we are missing something crucial: the possibility of working with Mars as it is. Instead of asking how we can change Mars to suit us, what if we asked a different question? How might we learn to engage with Mars's unique features? To explore this possibility, I turn to an ancient practice that has cultivated environmental relationships for centuries. The Japanese tea ceremony is more than just serving tea. It's a carefully choreographed ritual that transforms everyday actions into conscious engagement with space and environment. Through precise movements and mindful attention, it creates a unique atmosphere where even the simplest gesture carries profound significance. This philosophy manifests most clearly in the architecture of the tea house itself. Traditional tea house design embodies this philosophy. Every element, from the narrow entrance that requires bowing to the carefully placed windows that frame nature, is designed to heighten our awareness of the environment. The architecture itself becomes an active part of the ritual experience. While the physical elements of tea house create the setting, it's the ritual actions that bring these spaces to life. In tea ceremony, ritual transforms ordinary space into a realm of heightened awareness. Water isn't just a resource, it becomes precious through careful handling. Light isn't just illumination, it becomes a dialogue between interior and exterior. These transformations through ritual suggest new possibilities for Mars habitation. This way of seeing environment as something to engage with, rather than control, connects deeply with an ancient worldview called animism. Animism is a way of understanding the world where everything, from planets to weather patterns, has its own life and character. Through this lens, we can develop a new understanding of Mars, seeing it not as a dead planet to be transformed, but as an entity with its own rhythms and expressions. Just as tea ceremony teaches us to engage mindfully with our environment, we can learn to recognize and work with Mars's unique features. This shift from controlling to engaging with Mars leads us to consider how we might build resilient relationships with the planet. When we see Mars as a living entity, its characteristics, dust storms, temperature cycles, radiation, become opportunities for dialogue rather than obstacles to overcome. Just as tea ceremony creates meaningful exchange through careful attention, we can develop ways of working with Mars patterns rather than against them. Through ceremonial design and living architecture, we can create spaces that respond to Mars rhythms rather than shield against them. Living materials like mycelium can grow and adapt with Mars, while environmental patterns become part of our ceremonial journey. These biological and ceremonial approaches allow the cycles of Mars to become part of the experiential journey. I've explored these contrasting visions through AI-generated imagery. Here we see two contrasting visions. On the left, a conventional Mars habitat with its sealed-off tea house, isolated from the Martian environment. On the right, our alternative approach, where the ceremonial space actively engages with Mars's features, where environmental patterns become part of the spatial experience. This research isn't about imposing an idealized vision onto Mars. Instead, it proposes a dialogue with Mars's present reality. The tea ceremony shows us how ritual can transform our relationship with environment, where Mars becomes a collaborator, not a target for transformation. Through this counter-narrative, we might discover new ways of thinking about our presence on any planet we call home. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sawako, for your presentation. I wonder if, maybe we can, as there's still some light left over, maybe we can have a little bit of back and forth also with Roberto.
Yes,
tell you about some of the questions behind the thesis. Roberto, I don't know if any immediate questions come to
yeah,
mind.
I have immediately you present us quite usual imaginary of Mars that is built on images that we can find everywhere online, but it's not clear who are the authors of these images, why you choose that images. I mean, for example, you could present the Mars roller mm, machine photos that you get on the desert of the planet without any interpretation. For example, this is the land we know, photographically know of that place. So why you choose that image? You say, who are the authors and why you choose them and not others?
You mean the project?
Yeah.
So
Why you propose us this imaginary for the construction? Because this is one of the multiple hypotheses we can. There are also many movies on Mars and etc. Why you choose this?
just to show some examples that how right now Mars habitation is imagined.
Mm.
There are different ways of like habitation on Mars right now, but like tendency, how people imagine to live there is kind of having same tendency.
Mm.
But just to show this tendency, and then by showing some project as examples.
So then, a question that I would have for you in terms of, you've been working with this theme for some time and have been, I know, thinking about it with Gabriel with a lot of detail. And I wonder if maybe you could tell us a little bit about why do you feel like people want to go to Mars? What is it about Mars that's so attractive or enticing?
I think somehow Mars has similarity with the Earth, characteristic-wise. Some characters are quite different, but like size is like half size of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And then like some scientists found like possibilities to have some water underwater, or like living like beings. So some bacteria, or like people see some possibility to live there. And then like this makes people to curious how we can go there, how we can habitat there.
Mm.
So I think
So it's somewhere between in terms of the ecosystem in terrain, it's familiar enough,
yeah,
but at
yeah,
the same time, it fosters kind of like a terrestrial alternative. No,
yeah, yeah.
so it kind of exists within the realm of possibility, but then also allows you to kind of experiment with the more than earthly. No.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And then and also in your research, in the process of your research, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about to what extent you see this as a utopian or dystopian endeavor. Or maybe it's both. I don't know. What do you think?
What do you mean?
How much do you think that going to Mars is a utopic? So kind of a sense of Mars becoming the positive alternative to all of the problems that we have on Earth, or dystopic, meaning the kind of negative and disturbing reflection of a future that has come to be because of the damages that we've made on Earth. How much do you see as kind of going to Mars as a utopic or a dystopic voyage?
For me, like this utopian or dystopian thinking is kind of a little bit extreme.
Okay.
Like either extremely like good, or like can be very hard.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
So I see a little bit more like maybe in the middle or neutral,
Mhm.
like can be challenging, but can be also very scientifically like new foundings, and also possibility to apply some new technologies or new way of thinking.
Mm.
Like Mars can invite human to think like even planet as one being or one existence object.
Mm. So you're kind of thinking outside of this binary between the utopic and the dystopic.
Yeah, I would say so. And I
Mm.
think the kind of dystopian and then utopian is also very much human made,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also like how human treat or how human take the situation.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And this is also depends on the perception of us.
Yes. But then I wonder, so I think that something which really interests me about your work and your presentation is obviously this master's course is focusing on interior architecture. And you've gone to outer space, which is a fantastic interpretation um of our suggestion to deconstruct the idea of the interior, which you've completely done. But I'm wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit more about how this voyage to Mars relates to interior architecture and how and why, and how you came to go to space in a master's course about moving indoors.
So I think I specified this space as a kind of tea house.
Mm-hmm.
And then like tea house concept has interior space, but
Mm-hmm.
also this interior space is very much intellectual with the exterior space. So nature, trees, and then light and the moon and stars even. So this tea house interior is interior space, but very much like connected to the outside. And in a way, this is like this tea house space is blurring the like boundary. And I thought that this is interesting space to bring to the outer space.
Mm. Because you mean that the tea house itself is kind of this porous space between how we understand the inside and the outside. And then so bringing that into an extraterrestrial environment is kind of collapsing this interiority and this exteriority further.
Yeah, like I'm not sure this corrupting is a good word for express
Collapsing?
this. Corrupting, you said corrupting, right?
Collapsing.
Collapsing, okay.
Yes. But maybe that's not the correct word, no?
Yeah, but like bringing this space is like not just bringing the interior.
Mm-hmm.
Tea house is also related to the ceremony, so like rituals.
Mm-hmm.
So like just trying to interpret not just bringing this interior space itself, but related objects or related topics like traditions or rituals. This philosophical invisible being or related to the outer space.
Mm. And how did you come to this topic?
So like when I started to study architecture, I somehow wanted to build a tea house on Mars without any reason. Just this vision came to my mind, and then I thought, okay, I want to study architecture to build a tea house on Mars. So I actually don't know why this vision came to in my mind, but like my background is also related to this tea tradition, like Sennorikyu. The birthplace is the same as mine, and I grew up with seeing the traditional tea house and like this history. So somehow it connected to the like historical tradition to like present challenges of the human.
And maybe you could tell me a little bit more about your use of artificial intelligence in the project, because I noticed that you have a lot of images that have been generated. Why is this important for the project?
So AI, like this images are very much reflected by actually our like human create AI, and then this input the prompt. If I just tell them, okay, tea house on Mars, they immediately just started to create kind of conventional architecture, conventional space with like this space suits, and then like really can see how human interpreted so far the buildings and space. But if I prompt like little more different words like porous or animism or like Mysterium using different prompt, it somehow like shows different approach of the visualization. And then I found it very interesting. Just same AI.
Yes. And what were some of the differences that you noticed?
So differences, it's also like it depends also which AI I use. It also makes quite different output. It's also very much fascinating. But sorry, what was the question?
So maybe just depending on the different prompts, what did you find?
What I define
So what did you find? And you mentioned that when you were giving prompts related to animism, or related to, I don't know, a different series of language. I mean, I think what's so interesting about these image generation softwares is how much they rely on language, no?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, as you were working with these different softwares and thinking about this extraterrestrial space, did you gravitate towards using certain types of words? Or certain types of, or did you move towards, or did you prefer using certain types of language?
This is also always kind of a try and error. And then to get like my like kind of like kind of the image that's close to my vision, it's quite difficult. But like I really need to put so many words, really long prompt to get one kind of out of conventional imaginary. So yeah, like this process is quite fascinating, I think. It's very cool, like similar to the communication to the human as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it's experimenting with different combinations of words.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And what softwares were you using?
To generate images. I tried different like models. So far I could get most like wonderful images from Flux 121 Pro Ultra. And I also use Midjourney V6. but I would say Midjourney or this doll E3. These are quite good to get very architectural images, but quite conventional. So even that by putting so long prompt with like important keywords, still it's quite conventional. But if take Flex 1.14 Ultra, so far like most alternative visualization I got.
Thank you for continuing to share the images. I think it's fascinating in thinking about the type of data that's going into the production of these images, because what would be the reference point for these computerized systems? No?
Yeah.
I mean, is it sci-fi film, or have you thought about this? What is the AI software processing in order to form these images?
Different projects or movies probably as well.
I feel like it's interesting to think about then in turn, our image of Mars is so linked to cinema, no? Or what is the visual culture around, or what is the architectural vision that we would have of Mars is so dictated by imagination, no?
Yeah.
Or how would you? Yes.
Nowadays, I also started to create some movies, or not I created, but like AI also could like start. Can share as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like this as well. You could see.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how do you feel like the working with the video differs from navigating the photography? It's very interactive, no? It feels like almost being like being in a video game.
Yeah. I'm not sure like about movies yet. Maybe needs to be developed, or I don't know. Like I still feel pictures are more developed more, but yeah.
Well, Sawoko, thank you so much for sharing your research with us on Mars and walking us through some of the softwares and thinking behind it. I think it's been very interesting and really expanding what we understand interior architecture to mean. And when we're in the roundtable later on, we will have the opportunity to ask you some more questions about your research and your work and your trajectory. But now we will welcome up to the next speaker. So you're welcome to stay in the room, but we will now move on to the next talk. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm happy to welcome Maia. I hope I pronounce her properly. And
hello.
hey, nice to meet you. also by far. And she will present a lecture about title, What Are Some Remembered and Others Forgotten? And introduce herself. And maybe before to start, where you live, where you work. Thank you very much.
Yes. Should I share my screen or is it like?
Sure. Yes.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I mean, it's been a bit, I'm getting a bit out of the loop of doing a lot of online meetings because so yeah, I think I managed now. You can see my screen.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Indeed, the title is a bit vague, I also thought maybe, but I will explain. Yeah, my name is Inge Meijer. I'm a visual artist from Amsterdam. And thank you for having me here on the symposium. Yeah, and before I start, I would like to also thank the previous speakers for their absolutely wonderful contributions from yesterday and today. It's been thought-provoking, and what resonated with me is the need to bring back empathy into interiors that breathe dissociation online or offline. Somehow this really touched me. Thank you for joining me, and I'm looking forward to share some insight in my research. I put together a short lecture video giving insight in the overlooked element in exhibitions in the Stedelijk Museum and the Museum of Modern Art. Before I do this, I would like to say something very briefly about the interior of museum and galleries. As an artist, you cannot ignore the aesthetics of these spaces. Spaces that were long considered to be neutral. White, high walls, in combination with wooden floors, were supposed to have an impartial or neutral environment. My eyes were opened reading The Power of Display, which sharply refutes this impartiality. Author and art historian Marianne Anna Stanisławski writes, modern installations reveal much about fundamental modern aesthetic myths, such as genius, taste, and a conception of art as something universal and timeless. End of quote. The white cube as a modern myth of good taste, excellent and primarily white male genius. I would like to share my small lecture video, and after that, I continue. It was some years ago, on a tour with archivist Michiel Nijhoff, that I heard about plants as part of exhibition here in the Stedelijk. In the photo of the N.H. Werkman exhibition, I saw a Monstera deliciosa. What was that plant doing, elevated, leaning against this work of art? Why hadn't I known that plants were part of the exhibition? I was immediately drawn to the idea. What was the ideology behind placing plants? Was this an attempt to bridge the gap between culture and nature? And if so, were there certain considerations regarding the type of plants and the type of artworks? Through archival research and interviewing former employees, I began my study of plants. Even though plants were there for decades, there are no endowments that give them voice in the museum's history. Their existence vanished from the institutional narratives, and as time passed and conservation policies increased, it could seem like I photoshopped this Swiss cheese plant next to Piet Mondriaan's Victory Boogie Woogie. But I didn't. How had this been overlooked? Even this plant that stood on equal footing captured in the frame with one of the most renowned artworks, was not named or acknowledged. It is visibly invisible. In my project, The Plant Collection, I attempt to reintegrate the presence of plants in exhibition design into contemporary and historical notions of value. Sometimes plants appear to have a function, placed as a traffic controller, like a roundabout, guiding the visitors safely past the works of art. Or in front of a foreign object, like this fire extinguisher. Other times they are interventions, grouped together in what looks like a fern installation in the center of the room. Even this bench seemed to be placed so that the visitors could watch the plants. And at times interactions, creating some sort of landscape of forms and sculptures. Philosopher Emmanuel Kocha talks about the relationship between art and plants in a way that plants embody the aesthetic idea of vitality of form. Life's ability to produce its own forms, and that this inversively illustrate that forms are nothing but living beings, and that art is nothing but the spheres in which forms come to life. Due to the limited knowledge about the plants, I started to interview former employees who worked at the Stedelijk during the time plants were there. This is how I learned about the plant caretaker, Maia van der Ham. Hired as a guard, he was offered a 2-year botany course at de Koninklijke Nederlandse Maatschappij voor Tuinbouw en Plantkunde and began taking care of all the plants in the museum. On September 15, 1976, he inventoried 49 individual and 38 group plants at the Stedelijk. I also found documents showing that plants were donated to the museum by Mrs. Smith living in Amsterdam. Slowly, I wondered about the parallels between the plants and the works of art. What emerged from the exhibition photos was that plants lived within the museum for years and were part of multiple exhibitions. They were curated in the space and relocated after each exhibition into constellation. Following their presence, you see them growing within the museum walls. And when they weren't in the galleries, they moved temporarily to the offices. Could you not speak of a collection of plants held parallel to the collection of art? In a goodbye letter for Maia van der Ham's retirement, former director Willem Sandberg explains his thoughts behind the plants. I quote, "Plants connect the indoors with the outdoors. On the 5th of May, in 1945, I came back home, after 2 years of being on the move. All of the plants were dead, except for the Swiss cheese plant. There was only one leaf left on it. Now it covers an entire wall. Soon, thanks to cutting from France, it was joined by a whole family of African linden. They grew fast, and when they got too big for the house, they went to the Stedelijk. That was nature's entrance in the museum." Penny Spark summarizes in her recent publication, Nature Inside, the history of what Sandberg calls connecting the indoors with the outdoors. Over the past years, Nature Inside has become, in turn, a commodity, a marker of colonial power, a sign of aristocratic wealth and status, a component of Victorian middle-class feminine domesticity, an aesthetic strategy within European modernist architecture, a humanizing factor within late modernism in the private and public spheres, a tool within the late economic capitalism, a subject of the modern scientific paradigm, and a marker of the environmental crisis. As I came to understand that director Willem Sandberg was greatly influenced by Alfred Barr at the Museum of Modern Art, I became curious if there would also be a relationship between the plants. When I looked through their exhibition photos, thinking that I wasn't going to see any plants, to my surprise, this wasn't the case. Instead, the archive housed more than 500 exhibition photos with plants. Founded in 1929, MoMA is considered by some
to be one of the most influential museums of modern and contemporary art in the world, and has been a leader in ideas about exhibition design and the development of the white cube. That plants played a structural role in this for more than 60 years is an underexposed element. Why are some things remembered and others not? It was some years ago.
Oh, sorry.
It was some years ago.
Yeah. In response to this question, why are some things remembered and others not, I made my first publication, The Plant Collection, in 2019. The book consists of 272 exhibition photos from the archive of the Stedelijk Museum. I searched through their analog exhibition photos to find evidence, any proof of a plant's existence, even if I could see one leaf or a shadow. The photograph would be qualified for the publication as a proof of their existence in exhibitions. The aim for this work of art is to make the plants the main protagonist, so that it's impossible not to remember them after seeing all the documentation. During the process, I slowly started to wonder if the museum held next to the collection of art also a collection of plants. Plants were donated, curated, taken care of, and lived for years in the museum building. Together with designer Roger Willems and Dong-Yong Lee, we designed a book reflecting the idea of a collection by starting with the cover that displayed the 39 species of plants shown in the Stedelijk Museum. Then we follow in chronological order the exhibition, starting with the N.H. Werkman exhibition in 1945, which is the exhibition that director Willem Sandberg brought a plant from his home. And then we end in 1983 when the last plant appeared in the exhibition. The reason why plants disappear out of the galleries, I've never been able to find. Of course, the ideas about what is art and what is part of the museum interior changed through the introduction of installation art. In retrospective, we would view the plants as part of artworks. What also changed that the prices of artworks went up due to the development of art as an investment for the financial world. This increased the need for the already developing ideas around conservation. Perhaps it's a combination of all these elements together that the plants disappeared out of the exhibitions. I learned that there was another chapter to the plant disposal out of the museum. Louise Weinberg, who worked in the restoration department, told me about a Sansevieria in their workspace. This plant sprouted from some cuttings and grew very well. 2 decades later, when the museum was being renovated and the department had to move to temporary quarters, the Sansevieria moved with them. After the renovation was completed in 2013, it took 10 years. It turned out that the museum had appointed an art handling advisor who proceeded the abolishment of plants from the entire museum. Plants were no longer allowed in workspaces because of the atmospheric humidity, the safety, the hygiene.
Inga, I think we've lost the connection for a moment.
Please look the plant. It lives here. We and so we are
Inga, I think she totally disappeared.
Let's just wait one moment for her to return.
Mhm.
Hello.
Hey, I'm so sorry.
No worries. No
I
worries.
think the connection just
Don't worry. I think we
It
can.
happens.
so
We
I
so
have
we were.
Yeah.
Hello. Inga.
yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah,
Oh,
I do hear you, but
Hmm.
it says my connection is unstable.
we can see your plants.
We can see your plants.
And I can also
I
oh
think we can restart from the picture of the studio.
This was the studio. The last point that I have noted down was speaking about the art handler who spoke about kind of taking plants outside of and the conservation. It was the conservation point when we lost you.
exactly. So I'm all back connected and everybody can hear and see me.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we made cuttings from the last plants that this beautiful conservator took home. And we shared it with friends, and I actually made a special edition from the plant collection. Yeah, so the idea for a follow-up book in New York came right when I was already finishing the first book, because it seemed too important not to make a follow-up book about the plants in the MoMA. Only it still took me 5 more years, and the reason for that was that the photo rights were very high. So together with designer Roger Willems, okay, let's go next. We were figuring out ways how to be able to deal with this so-called problem of the photo rights. And it took us a long time, and we tried several designs, but in the end we figured out that the best way to deal with the photo rights was to start drawing the plants and make a combination of the photos of exhibitions and the plant drawings based upon the photo exhibitions also. And in some way, it's beautiful how something that is first an obstacle can actually become a source of inspiration. And in a common exhibition, the plant's drawings are included back into the white cube, but this time as a drawing, as a work of art. I will share some images of the book. I think in the end, I draw probably over more than 1,000 drawings, really hurting my hands. But yeah, drawing is also a really beautiful way of getting closer. Yeah, I am already kind of at the end of my presentation, and I wanted to take a moment to draw some attention to the art book as a medium and how they have their own ways of entering spaces. With the help of independent bookstores, artworks in the form of a book get into the hands of locals in Taipei, Bangkok, Seoul, Kyoto, Melbourne, San Francisco, Kiev, and lots more other places. The book travels to homes where they end up in the hands of family members, friends, and colleagues. This is how books form an alternative way of distribution, works of art, and become part of interiors. They connect the inside with the outside, just as an indoor plant does. Thank you.
Thanks. So
Yeah.
um,
Sorry, what did you say, Roberto?
nothing. Did I stop you?
No. I mean, I prepared like a kind of a presentation that I thought would be fitting. So this is kind of the end of my presentation.
Fantastic.
And
yeah. Very, very interesting and very, very elegant. Said that there was this break on the line, but wonderful. Very, very interested to hear you. And we will discuss and ask you many questions, I suppose, later when we had our roundtable at noon.
Yeah.
And sorry to be so fast, but
it's good. It's good because I was almost a bit afraid that my presentation would be a bit too short, but I hope it just flows nicely and we all meet. And I'm looking forward to chat with you and then the other artists and designers. And yeah, that's something to look forward to. I see you later then.
Yes. Inga, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really, really, yeah, it was. I have a lot of questions noted down, and really looking forward to hearing more, particularly because I'm currently editing a book with Sternberg called Plant Space. So it's very related to your research, and so I feel very lucky and very fortunate to be able to listen to you and hear about it. And as mentioned by Roberto, at 12 o'clock, we will be able to have this this roundtable and speak more about it. But because we actually have 4 minutes until the end of the presentation, I hope you wouldn't mind if I just ask you a very specific question about your research in particular, which has to do with you mentioning, you know, this point about the movement towards installation art, and then kind of what the role of the plant, how the role of the plant changes within, you know, within the shift. And I guess when we're looking at a lot of contemporary art practices, and if we kind of follow this argument of the microbial terms, right? So the movement towards the microbe and kind of involving more than human life in a lot of contemporary artistic practices, and seeing kind of plants and fungi surface in these spaces. I wonder if in your research you've looked at how those conservation protocols are changing as a result. What happens when the plant is itself a work of art instead of just supplanting it as a spatial device?
Yeah, I mean, many things come to mind. I think it's ultimately a matter of what risk you would like to take. Because when I interviewed the conservators, they told me, if you want to preserve artworks, you should also avoid having human beings making contact with them, because they are also carrying all kinds of bacteria and so I think when recently, like in 2022, there was an exhibition, Matisse and the Red Room in the MoMA, and they had plants there. I mean, they were not in the exhibition space, they were in a hallway. And I talked to somebody involved in that, and it's been a discussion between different kind of interest. I mean, some people are only looking at the conservation, and then they would not want to take any risk in that involving. I mean, besides, so I mean, it's a complicated question, and a lot of elements to it. So I also don't want to make it too complicated. But I recently did a performance in the Stedelijk Museum where we sang with the choir for a sculpture of mycelium. This was part of an exhibition.
My friend told me about that. It was great.
Yeah, and the exhibition was really amazing. It was with it was with designers who made clothes from mycelium, and there was a sculpture of mycelium. It was really fantastic. And so it's also really depends on the institution what kind of risk they would like to take and how far they can negotiate that with their colleagues. That's been my experience for that. And I find it always very hopeful when plants or all other kinds of beings can enter the museum. I find it something to push for.
Yeah, but your work is pretty known. I recently suggested to one of our students in the bachelor program, she's doing a small master, a small bachelor thesis about plants in apartments, and I suggest to look. But also, there are many. But me too. I'm working on a lecture for the Biennale about having plants in the exhibition. But maybe what's the story, I think, is very long. It's also because you really present in a modern environment. But if you look at the picture of the first Biennale in 1894, there were plants of plants. Was plants. Was incredible. It was like forest inside.
I know, but
go ahead. Direct the direction of the visitor was really a form of important decoration of a historian. Excuse me.
No, maybe we have to
move on. Yes, we will. I don't want to.
Yeah, it's time for the 4 minutes, but let our discussion for later.
Yes. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really a pleasure. And speak more at noon.
Yes.
Welcome to Maria Jose Crespo and Madeleine Raggi.
Yes, hi.
Hello, hi.
Very happy to see you on face after some trouble with your names in our program, but I'm very, very happy to receive you and let you the space to introduce yourself maybe and your, I suppose, wonderful lecture about double-edged zones, waterways, borderscapes, and corporeal limits.
Yes, thank you so much. Hi, I'm Madeleine Ruggi, and this is Maria Jose Crespo. We are going to, we're very happy to be here today. So thank you for having us, and thanks to the other presenters. And we're very much looking forward to chatting later on. Our presentation is an audio-visual presentation that will last about 26 minutes. And it's a kind of reflection on our collaborative work together over the past kind of 3-4 years.
So we are gonna play it we're gonna share a screen and we are gonna play it with sound, with the audio from like the tab. So hope it works all right. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah, yes.
All right.
Today, we are presenting an entanglement of our separate bodies of research and how we have applied them to complex ideas in mediation, territories, infrastructure, archive, body, access, and value. We will focus on port infrastructures in the Netherlands, using these terms as keywords to form a lexicon to guide us around the port, a site with many layers that can be viewed through different lenses and temporalities to understand its varied identities. We are drawn to the huge mechanisms which make up the port. Our previous iterations of this presentation have used processes of translation to find clarity in these layers through our lenses as female artists. This lens impacts our encounters and experiences at the site of the port. By we, We refer to us as the artists and our individual experiences, and you as the viewers. In this space, we draw a middle ground between the port of Amsterdam and the port of Rotterdam, and the places we practiced prior to our being there, the border life experiences of Tijuana, and the circulation of trade and consumption embedded in London. With these knowledges, we're digging to decipher the relationship between our past lived experience and the past connected world of the site of the port, the archive interior.
This presentation has become a collaborative way of looking at research and art research. Alongside this work, utilize archival styles throughout institutions and the interpretations of in colliding with separate inquiry, the potential we have been doing are complex and intense. The plans overlap, emergency, and rely on one another. To organize ourselves, we created categories extracted from our separate practices, which we will utilize as intertitles in this presentation. The way these categories overlap geometric processes of layering and collaging make us overcome the rigidity of the participants that we are investigating. Categories can be restrictive, whereas of other times enduring. These please explore these contradictions. Our collaboration began in the midst of COVID at the port of Rotterdam, Europe's largest harbor. We cycled around the port where a trading system functioned whilst most of the world was restricted to the confines of its homes. Here we found ourselves surrounded by tools of immense scale, cogs in the machine, which form part of a global lexicon of circulation, consumption, and communication. Since then, we have created a processing system which involves making contact, going to site, recording sounds, transcribing, and web scraping. We borrow information, make auto-translation, chop legal documents, and observe live surveillance videos. Doing so, we synthesize between artist, secretary, journalist, consumer, listener, and speaker.
We converge speech and image because language is slippery. Gestures are not always immediately legible. Our observations attempt to reveal the way zones of negotiation have been conditioned to exist. The methodologies we have formed through our collaboration reflect the many identities of the port. This presentation doesn't just depict one single place or encounter, but a multitude of sensations that we have experienced while investigating sites. Our bodies call to witness physical forms, to understand their individual narratives and values in order to get closer to capitalist structures. In our research and making, we become binders that connect one source to another. We make specific the relation between ourselves, the sites, and the processing which takes place there. We use our bodies to measure the impact of our decisions and the repercussions they bear on others. They become a double tool. They encounter, but also measure, becoming a dichotomy between intimacy and technology. As women, we have created our own code of conduct at these sites. These are intentional gestures in response to experiences at the port, often dominated by men. The body is a technology of mediation. It plays a role in crossing infrastructural boundaries. We use our bodies to try to make sense of the material encounters between ourselves and external territories, to break feelings of alienation. Alienation relies on three elements: a subject and an object that belong together, and the problematic relations of separation between them. We too experience forms of this separation as we try to bridge spaces of unknowing between ourselves and the products, raw materials, services, and sites which form the material included in this presentation today. Our methodologies layer different voices and materials, which are collaged as found objects, sounds, and textures, pieced together through our encounters. Slices of cables were given to us by a project manager at marine contractor Boscalis upon a visit to the port. A cross-section of plastics, rubber, steel, and copper. cables which transmitted wind energy from an offshore turbine upon land and into the grid, now only hold the image of their previous existence. We imagine the network of information which courses through these cables, connecting the natural world with the technological via history.
Our delving into the ports led us to look at the history of trade in the Netherlands, the port of Amsterdam, the trading formalities of the VOC of the Dutch East India Company, which were developed to form the structure of the stock exchange, which still exists across the globe today. At the port of Amsterdam, environments coexist. Two halves of a rusted ship lie, as in a slumber, alongside one another. Surrounding it stand advanced factories and distribution centers for biofuel, coal, cars, rubber, and cacao. The useless ship, snapped in half, embodies a failed journey. Profits scuppered. Meanwhile, the fragrant scent from the spice processing facility demarcates one business from the next. The lingering scent drawing vast distances across seas to our nostrils. Both Amsterdam and Rotterdam ports are situated at the edge of Europe. They are access and exit points. They are threshold zones and formula-like interfaces, which you might, at times, struggle to tell the difference between. The traces of their identities do emerge.
We have been drawn to architectures of trade, posting hooks suspended outside merchants' houses, PVC curtains which fringe distribution centres stocked with goods, crenulated shells of buildings which are erected and dismantled upon price fluctuations, latticed pipes funneling petrochemicals from sea vessel to tank terminal. The man-made waterways dispersed across the Netherlands were carved out of the land in order to shorten shipping routes, saving time and operating costs for trading companies. Efficient trade is physically embedded in the land and waters of the Netherlands.
If we look beyond Dutch ports, we can find other architectures of trade. For example, since 1965, Mexico industrialized its northern border with maquiladoras. In this zone, multinational corporations focused on assembling and processing electronics and raw materials are allowed to settle in the border towns because of the low labor costs, absorption of taxes, and the capitalist tendency of a terrible bureaucracy. Most of its employees are women, and they represent a super a more vulnerable labor force than their male counterparts. To the eyes of the multinationals, these women are young and without experience and are not informed of their legal rights. Women are drawn to these zones, and they become part of the mechanism, a globalized device being fed by parts of their bodies.
When we are confronted with particular parameters in a territory, like alarm sounds, diminutive constructions, and revealing chemical scents, the body becomes a mediator, because tuning in to its surroundings. Constructive mediation can range from an action, a body, a currency, a mechanism, a thought, or a border. It can be a single entity or a moment within an organization network or a production flow. The objects, footage, and conversations we have obtained in these zones become entry points to often inaccessible privatized networks. To be in the middle, it is an interim position. Sometimes the gates are in. Often are granted access to sites to enter negotiation. In the context of court, we are considered outsiders or hazards. We contact people to obtain information, to gain human contact at a site which is heavily machined or concealed behind fences. In 2021, I obtained a VHF radio scanner from the port of Rotterdam. I walked around the port and tuned into maritime communications. Port sound escaped from its contained parameters. The scanner acted as a mediator between the port and the ship, whilst it also became a mediator between myself and the circulatory activity in the waterways. I scrolled through noise in search of voices, but sonic boundaries obscured my ability to decipher communication, and I felt my separation in layers of distance, revealed as abbreviated language, foreign language, and noise.
Visits to archives have informed our learnings of the development of trade and commodity production, which began to infiltrate daily life in the Netherlands to the VOC. In these interiors, we have observed objects which survive long journeys across the globe. Words from an inventory book view at the Hague National Archive are Google translated. The app glitches as it struggles to translate the words of Governor General Johan van Horn during his time at the Indies around 1690s. Archives bring historical gestures into our present moment. When we unfold topographical maps, trace navigation marked on glassy paper, and leaf through pages and bound diaries, observing the performative spirals in the handwritten, we are positioned between two temporalities. It's in this way that archive is activated. Contemporary accessing of the archive shifts its dialogues with the past. Despite our skepticism towards the archive as a representation of actual narratives, we are drawn to its invitation for new conversations and doubts. We are using the ports as an entry point to investigate a rupture in the archive, a moment to examine history slippages through our layering of material.
We find tangible ways to experience the gravity of the bound diaries listing commodities ravaged from overseas countries, which the VOC extorted as they expanded their territory. Peppercorns, wood, porcelain, silk, and coffee. Archive collections held online deny our personal experience. They add another layer of distance, yet they enable histories and time to become somewhat non-linear through their accessibility. For us, both physical and digital archival materials are transportative devices that shift the abstract space we navigate at the port. We seek the archival port through our trips to the actual port. Woven into encounters and conversations, historical narratives get actualized. They create new dialogues and explain why certain artifacts had not been preserved. Finding fictions in the archives as linguistic zones becomes another type of geographical space.
A liminal space is somewhere which feels becoming, always a transitional space forming unclear sites between boundaries. It often appears as a violent move in between things, enabling double-edged zones to be formed. These zones can be found in between territories, as geographical areas, but also as other unclear physical spaces like a port, a border, and in forms that belong to both sides, like a migration guard or a ship waterline scale. These zones cannot only be defined as relational, economical, historical, or concerned with identity. They adopt many identities simultaneously between regulated and informal.
Hello, poopies. Hoe gaat het?
They
Oh,
adopt
good.
many identities simultaneously.
Of course, I mean, I was in the middle of my presentation and then the connection broke.
And undefined territory, constantly in and out of visibility.
Well, whatever. But it was okay. It's not so high scale, you know. So, but it was nice. But what is the plan?
At the periphery, but also invisibly at the core of most people's daily life, and they are embodied in everyday.
Do you want to stay tonight in Ruigoord?
Because of this,
there must be somebody in the back with the microphone.
Experiences with physical encounters. What potential actions do you imagine can happen there? What kind of fiction does a blurred boundary enable?
These kind of liminal spaces could be seen to cross over with spaces of negotiation.
Hallo, peace. Nog je lekkere broekje aan? A whole universe in there.
Hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. So
apologies. I think there was unintended interruption, but I've silenced the user.
Thank you.
I have huge apologies for this. Huge apology. I was a little bit confused for a moment, but now we can.
Don't worry.
Yeah, we should have the.
Okay. Okay, now we can continue. Apologies for interrupting your beautiful presentation.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Some bloody, cupid, administered, sexualized, smuggled, and violent. While a pile of stones was the beginning of the legality between Mexico and the United States in London, similar informal gestures were created for negotiations. The first trading tours came about in coffee shops, where a circle would be drawn in tea sawdust on the floor, marking where trading would begin and where it would end. Embedded in this marking, which was practiced in London but originated in Amsterdam, was the contracting of tradable stock, the promise of corporate bonds as proof of debt, and the hope of a ship's arrival for an influx of sellable commodities, tangible fungibility.
Boundaries are porous and have permeability. They morph and continue. When blurring its limits, plural identities surface. For example, Tijuana, Mexico is a place of regulation in a cosmic space, which enables possibilities in fiction. For this contradiction, it needs bodies to support its functions of reproducing and extending in borders. Its administration methods face distance, making everyone a witness, a collaborator, performing night after night. Borderland methodology seems to fill the void between citizens in liminal zones, with many processes extending its magnitude. When looking closely, the border wall disappears, like when someone is too close to your face and gets blurred. Meanwhile, people wait to form a line: migrants, workers, families, or shoppers. The line grows over the hours, depending on the day of the week and the time. Cars make a line at standby engines, playing with the space, constantly redrawing the actuality of the line. Borders are thick and don't have fixed limits. They can be located anywhere because they are constantly being redrawn, relocated with administration processes and fictional tools, leaving traces in emergent and disoriented bodies. Going back in time, I think about how I used to navigate Tijuana as a double-edged sword. I close my eyes and I see myself inside a car, driving across a road divided by a fence that now forms two sides of the same road. I can see that this road bends in different zones of a hill. Meanwhile, the fence traverses in the same space in a quasi-straight line. I don't know whose car is this and why this person is driving me across the fenced land. I'm feeling suspicious and accomplice at the same time. I see a red building painted with a circular logo showing black letters in green, white, and red colors on the other side. The colors have faded on the outside wall of the building. The ugly green has been replaced by different gradients of what looks like burnt out objects. This wall is very close to the metallic one, and in between both there is a busy transit zone called La Internacional. Serious business are happening there right now. Unconscious people are crossing between the narrow fenced roads. Where are they going? There is no more land where to go.
An administered space that I know is Pier 7. It is an entrance point where trucks carry containers. I stand at the periphery. My line of vision is somewhat obscured by the physical demarcation of a fence. Unlike the Tijuana border, this fence is perforated and I can see through to the other side. A red truck paused at a kiosk where the driver would request access through the gate to ease him closer to the ships where he will unload. At the open window, the driver's face appeared. His finger pressed the button, and before he continued his journey forward, he acknowledged me and my camera with a wink. This was a moment of human interaction within the global machine, encapsulated in a disposable instant. The slightness of the wink communicated gender divide, sexuality, and the absurd. Its single second became a succumbing to my desire to seek an emotive body in an environment that frequently denied it. Alienation creates a muddying sensation, a controlled disorientation, that one shouldn't belong or be visible. It's the negation of information, sometimes accidental, often intended. It's vertiginous. It zooms you from the macro perspective of this web of furious production and consumption to the micro.
When we visit the port of Amsterdam and this perception of distance over direct arises, we have come to realize that distance is also a form of concealment, which is used to obscure disparities of power and ecological effects. At the port of Amsterdam, the roads are named after other locations in Portugal: Azië Havenberg, Australia Havenberg, Corsica Berg, and America Havenberg. Questions around identity, connectivity, and authority linger within these street names. Proximity to these sites led us to question our relationship with constructs of mediation and governance. How is the individual body positioned in relation to terms which address the other? At the arrangement of scalar curves, a sense of disorientation is caused by the vast space between the immensity of the human's global existence and the smallness of one's own private everyday life. When you look at life through a global perspective, the individual is lost.
Administrative devices push and pull us between illusions of visibility and invisibility. While being on a boat tour of Amsterdam Port, the layering of infrastructures that we have aimed to embody through our collaborative practice unfolds before us. Trade processes, social encounters, colonial history, and ecological future plans make a collage in motion. What kind of strategies of visibility at the port do we encounter? Which are the moments that allow us to access an intimate moment with machine-driven processes?
Photographs we took on a boat tour depict poor tourists enjoying the port landscape, a kind of capitalist amusement park. In the safe confines of the guided tour, we all become just as we focus our lenses and observe the polar port on liquid. We too beauty cars have decorated with the making of sites.
I'm sorry, Maria, we cannot hear you. Would you mind going closer to the microphone?
This become embodiments of the violence of abstracted distance, where sites of processing and consumption are located at the beginning. It is through concealment and distance that value is achieved. Spaces between destinations of production and trade, when mediated, shapes the values of the consumer basis. MillionTraffic.com is a mediation interface which depicts the live movement of ships across the world. Panama, Liberia, and the Marshall Islands are some of the flags of convenience which dominate maritime trade. A flag of convenience flies when the owner of a vessel registers their ship in a different country to ownership, taking advantage of that country's minimal regulation, cheap labor, and low taxes. These flags benefit only the few. They are legal demarcations. From maritime surveillance mechanism to live stream border waiting lines, we have come closer to understand how authority is administered. LaNinenVivo.com watches the waiting lines at some border entry points between Mexico and the United States. On their website, we find advertisements from real estate companies, which are part of the territorialization processes in the city, translating rent prices into dollars. Stock market kind of speech, the daily life language in this border town. Every day you might wonder, how much is the dollar today? The borderlands and infrastructural edges of transaction at the port are both similar and abrasive to one another. They invite and repel. They are highly functional and vacant. The viewfinder we are looking through features at all times of new currency, making it possible to understand how they might fluctuate, leaving traces in landscapes revealing their mode of governance. Like the unstable flux of the Rio Grande Bravo River, which challenges the legality of the U.S.-Mexico border.
From blurry borders and currency scales on both land and sea, we now tune into the body. On the floor of the London Metal Exchange, fleeting hand gestures represent quantities of money. Currencies are corporeally tossed across the room in a battle for the best deal. A found manual of gestures, used on the trading floor, instructs the reader. Your palms face you when you are signaling a buy, and face away from you when you are signaling a sell. For the numbers 1 to 5, hold your fingers straight up. To indicate quantity, touch your face. Hand moves across throat, shows that the order has been cancelled.
Central to this presentation is our desire to understand how, as individual corporeal beings, we are adjusting to living in a constantly networked world between past and present. We seek extended relationships with the materials we use and are drawn to, and the awareness of the geological strata-like layers we imprint across the globe. Over the past 3 years, we have sought to witness some of the different mechanism systems in history which out of the interior of our daily lives. Their scale overwhelm our corporeal range. It is here that we find ourselves in a double-edged sword, validating our own also uncertain frame of presentation with global perspectives. Thanks.
Thank you.
Maria and Madeleine, thank you so much for your presentation. It was a very, very beautiful performance to watch in the space. And I have a lot of questions for you in terms of the process and in terms of the content, and also to hear more about your practice as artists. But we will have time to do this during the roundtable at 12. And I also apologize again for the interruption in the middle, but interior ecologies conference, it kind of, we're all at home, so it happens. But thank you so much for your generosity and for sharing. But now we will move on to the next presentation and then come back together at 12 so we can speak about it properly. And thank you.
Thank you.
So now is the time of Juan Marcia Mas. I hope I pronounced his name properly. I ask this every time. And it's working at ETH Zurich and Kunsthalle Zurich. They will present a lecture titled True Bodies and Buildings. Welcome, Juan. And nice to have you here with us.
Hello. Yeah, welcome. Do you hear me good, actually?
Yeah, perfectly. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me. Very happy to be able to present this talk today and my work generally. So I'll just begin, I guess. I'll share my screen. Yeah, do you see my screen?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll just start. This lecture is titled Through Bodies and Buildings. But Through Bodies and Buildings is a kind of also a larger project I'm working on. It will be mainly a publication that I'm currently editing together with Shen He, and it's a broader collaboration between the ETH Architecture Department and the Department of Fine Arts at ZLK here in Zurich. But this talk is kind of already touching upon the things that we will discuss in the book, things that will be discussed, but also through the contribution of other authors. So it will not be only us; it will be many people contributing with different topics and views. To this matter. So for today, I would just like to start very simply with a sentence, a kind of phrase by Veronica Gago. It's a sentence that kind of has always intrigued me, maybe just because I come from the background of architecture. And this phrase is the desire to change everything. It's kind of the undertitle to her publication, Feminist Potencia. Maybe probably many of you know Veronica Gago already, but she's kind of the leader or one of the leaders, organizers of this movement in Argentina called Ni Una Menos, which is kind of it kind of erupted very, very, very all of a sudden due to this crisis that of domestic violence and due to the really large number of femicides that was ongoing in Argentina, and then of course all of a sudden all women and other people by other kind of bodies kind of took the streets and started to protest against this. And so, but Veronica's talking about this in her book, and about this desire to change everything. And yeah, so the first part of the sentence is desire, and desire is here represent this kind of very urgent and this kind of unavoidable, inescapable necessity for something that is kind of unsatisfied or unfulfilled. It is the lack of something, if you want to read it in Lacanian terms, a lack of something that needs to be compensated for. And it is what precedes pleasure. So it's before pleasure, which would be the kind of the satisfaction. You have the desire for it, and therefore, desire is kind of urgent, is uncontrolled, desperate, frenetic, and it because all of this, it presents itself as a force, a sort of power that has transformative potential, which is what interests me from this. Veronica writes about this potencia, this feminist potencia, as this kind of desiring capacity, the capacity to desire. Then there is change, which is kind of rather neutral in this case. Change, you could maybe replace it to transform, maybe. So it's kind of not hinting at a result yet. Like it's just it's not neither positive or nor negative. It's not disrupting or improving. It's just which would be like already hinting at reparative or destructive approaches. It's just like there's no finality in mind. It's just the need for change, really. And then, of course, there's everything, which is what strikes me the most about it, which is what makes it really something that makes me think a lot. Let's say it's how is it possible to change everything? How is it possible to change everything at the same time? How is it possible to produce a break, a rupture, a fracture, and this kind of seemingly seamless continuity of things? But of course, when thinking about it, it becomes kind of clear that for one thing to change, and in this case, it's in the case of Veronica Gago, is femicides and gender-related violence. The whole system that produces these things has to change as well. The system that kind of produces it, that produces the rule of heteropatriarchy, amongst other violent and unjust hierarchies of being. And the system, I mean, this, of course, has been theorized a lot also in recent years. And I'm just taking here very briefly the notion of Federico Campagna, which is, the system of of westernized modernity, and the civilization, as Federico Campagna says, has kind of produced its own way of worlding, which is a certain way of making sense of reality and make this reality work in a certain way, tell a specific story, and so world in this sense means not only it is both a subjective and phenomenological perceptual frame of each being, kind of, but also the shared cultural perspective that would be what we call that I will call the civilization of Westernized modernity. So, but this is basically what this everything that Gago is hinting at, this everything that needs to change in a way. And maybe the reason why I found this sentence so striking is maybe because I indeed come from the background of architecture, and when I think about changing everything, what comes into mind is basically buildings. And in principle, it is not possible to change buildings very quickly, and it is even more unimaginable to change every building, a whole city substantially. But of course, buildings belong as much as everything else to this specific way of, like, to the specific world we're born within. So they are like this sort of yeah, wheels in this whole kind of system that make the thing work as it works. And so they're kind of, yeah, buildings in a way are architectural devices that organize the circulation of bodies. And then following Paul Preciado, introducing also the thoughts of Paul Preciado, organizing the flow of substances and images that stimulate and arouse these bodies, that create desire in these bodies. So this would be pornography and pharmaceutical drugs. And like this, by the circulation, by controlling kind of the circulation of images and drugs, mainly current systems of or systems of exploitation of bodies are being put in place and kind of uphold. So to change everything, now to say it once more, would mean to change buildings and cities as they stand as well. And yeah, today, as you can imagine, I will not talk about tearing down buildings and building everything anew. I mean, even if you would do that, you would need to it would be hard to escape the fact that you would need to or you would need to approach the task of imagining how everything could be radically different. So there will be the risk, of course, of reproducing what is already familiar to us and what we have already known or seen, to just build the city as it was in a way. But anyway, I'd like to go back to the so yeah, just yeah, so this is just to support what I was talking about, that we really embody buildings. And but going back again to Veronica Gago and recalling once more this notion of desire, which is what I want to talk about. According to her, desire is really something that can set this kind of radical transformation processes in motion, or at least manifest their urge and necessity. So at least make them thinkable, or yeah, or creating the possibility for them. So and of course, it's not to say that there are many different kinds of desires, and of course there are also normative desires that reinforce, for example, yeah, capitalistic logics of commodification and consumption. But in this talk, or now I'm obviously referring to dissident desires, to desires, and mainly sexual desires now in this talk, that are dissident to the norm. And for this, I would like to introduce two quotes by Paul Preciado from Testo Junkie. This is that I also find quite striking. This is where he says, well, back then she, well, Testo Junkie is you probably know this as well, but it's this book where they're explaining their transitioning process. And or kind of talking about it. And he says, I'm not taking testosterone to change myself into a man or as a physical strategy of transsexualism. I take it to foil what society wanted to make of me. And this is, yeah, I find it kind of interesting because it seems almost as he would not be, yeah, as it is more kind of, or he puts it more as an act of rebellion, really, from the very society that kind of labeled her before as a woman at the moment of birth. But it is almost yeah, the desire here is to oppose, to defy, to disobey, to not conform. So really to break with was a given before. And very interesting as well, it doesn't seem to have a finality, so a goal, because the implication is, okay, the desire would be to become a man, but of course this is not really the goal. It's just because that would mean to just change one category to another. So the goal is kind of left open. It's something that is unknown. And this is a further kind of iteration of it, where he asks himself, yeah, what about my desire for transformation? What can I do about all these years that I define myself as feminist? What kind of feminist am I today? Am I a feminist hooked on testosterone or a transgender body hooked on feminism? And this is interesting because it talks about the yeah, this quality of desire that I want to really put on the table today, which is to push individuals' bodies to a space of non-definition, to a space of to this kind of liminal space of becoming either or, where things, labels, and categories don't work anymore. So he's asking himself, so yeah, is it possible to be a woman and kind of defending women's rights, but kind of holding the desire of taking testosterone, so the hormone of masculinity? Is that, does that make sense? And is this possible at the same time? And this kind of also opens a bit the question to me, like to which extent are these kind of political projects embodied or not? Like, do you need to be a woman to kind of embody the in this case the project, the political project of feminism? Yeah. So all of these said, I would like now to take you to a very specific case study, which is a sex cinema in Zurich, at Langstrasse. For those of you that know Zurich, Langstrasse is the kind of red light district of Zurich. It's just one street basically, but it concentrates all of the sex workers but also nightclubs and brothels and all these kind of things. And Kino Roland was kind of let's say quite an important building in all this constellation. But the thing is, Kino Roland closed down some years ago, actually during COVID. And it's back then, me and I was collaborating with Shanhei, Nicola, Freddie Fishley, Niels Olsen. We took this closing down as a sign for a broader process of transformation and the kind of gender sexual paradigm. And of course it closed down because many other reasons as well. I mean, it's the whole street is kind of in a process of gentrification anyways, and of course audiovisual the consumption of films in general is kind of transitioning to like cinemas are closing down anyway. There's transitioning to domestic space and all of this, but still we thought, okay, this has to mean something in a way. And so we did this exhibition there. But first, before talking about the exhibition, I would like to talk about the cinema a bit more. Before it closed down, it really worked as this kind of machine. So this, what I was talking before, like this kind of wheel and the whole system that is that would be like the heteropatriarchal system. And so if you think of of course, of the nuclear family and the man, the kind of the head of the family having to kind of commit also sexually to the family, this would be then kind of this escape that also provides this a kind of escape from the commitment and the of the family, and where a possibility to get liberated from kind of obligations of monogamy, let's say. So, but it works as a kind of machine. It's actually quite interesting in this specific typology, because it's as you can already see, it has, I mean, first of course, that is this big room where movies are screened. It's completely dark. It's completely blacked out, and but it kind of has this two entrances from the street. They're separate from each other, and I think people, I don't know if you see my mouse, but I think people would go through here and get a ticket at the counter, and then go into the cinema space, and then or take the stair up to the kind of mezzanine floor, and watch pornography, consume pornography, and then get out through the other stair and through the other door. This is kind of to ensure that anonymity is kind of that people are kept anonymous, that you don't have to cross and to face anyone else. So because this so but then if you take the cinema in broader terms as this is one of the pieces that, and then of course you have the as I said, the dark room where films are showing, where of course women are being kind of commodified as a kind of sexual commodity. You take the cinema as a thing, as something that kind of upholds the system of heteropatriarchy. It kind of, this is what it does. This is basically my point. But then there were other things happening in the cinema, because the cinema is kind of at the same time, it's kind of a space where, well, it's neither private nor public. It's kind of dark. It puts people, and this is puts people in a kind of like seeming like in a soporific state, like not kind of awake, not asleep, but in a space that kind of it creates a space where suddenly other things become possible that would not be possible in the kind of bright light of the street. So of course, what I'm hinting at is that it became a cruising spot. You have also the fact that you have like men all sitting next to each other. They're aroused, and they're so men started having basically relationships with each other. There are a lot of stories about this. So in a way, the space that the cinema that is kind of upholding this kind of rule of heteropatriarchy at the same time is also kind of creating the condition, maybe unintended, in an unintended way, to crack it, to undo it, and to which we thought was very interesting. But anyway, the cinema closed and we did this kind of exhibition. We tried to establish this kind of discursive space within it to talk about all these things and to introduce also other kinds of desires. We, of course, introduced many artists that, trying to subvert what kind of happened before over there. So, of course, many artists that are female identifying. This is, for example, a work by Ellen Cantor that is like, just long story short, she produced this paintings for another show in Zurich in the 90s. The show, and then she produced a piece of pornography herself, lesbian pornography, and then the show got kind of censored one day before the opening. So we just wanted to kind of show this now again properly and give her the space to show these beautiful drawings. This is another work which is by Dean Samishima. Some pictures collected from the internet that is kind of an early version of Grindr. Is like he collected them from dating websites, and people show themselves like naked, but still not disclosing fully their face or keeping this anonymity, but just by hiding it behind the flash, which I think it's very interesting. And this is already telling a bit, telling again about this transition of pornography, sex work being kind of slowly, bit by bit, leaving the physical space of the cinema, or this kind of semi-public space of the cinema, and this and the public space of the Langstrasse, the red light district, and just basically entering the homes, the private homes, the domestic sphere, and another iteration of this, and going even further, we had this performance by Candela Capitan, which was kind of radical because it was on the opening night. I showed this picture before. Like, so many people came and were kind of also excited to see this performance. And then she basically was performing in this very enclosed, tiny space where nobody could see her. And she was just streaming it online. So basically everybody had to get their phones out and look at it online through Chatterbait. But again, just talking about this broader transition that is happening from this kind of physical space of the cinema to kind of more digital spaces, but also the domestic space. And with this, many questions kind of arise. I mean, let's say the whole kind of apparatus of film production and distribution and showing and all the typologies that were designed for it, like cinema and everything, this just all kind of evaporates, and it all becomes like reduced to the phone, the personal device, through which you can basically produce and consume pornography. At the same time, it turns kind of everyone into a potential sex worker, and which is interesting because it kind of it is liberating in a certain way. I mean, in a certain sense, can be liberating for people that have been, and mostly women, of course, they've been exploited before by, I don't know, the film industry, let's say, and abusive relationships there, and all sort of things. So now basically you control what you film and when and what you show, and you don't. But at the same time, of course, it extends the fact that, or this kind of economy through a broader range of society, so everybody becomes is able to market their body and could potentially become dependent on this economy and yeah and this is anyways and if you think about it not only in terms of pornography or anything, this is anyways yeah something that is happening anyhow, like the way that of marketing body the body online and turning it into a desirable commodity. But then just to finish, we also had some other kind of events that really made space for a way of being and relating that we really believe in, and so we left the space to people that are anyways living around the street to we had voguing workshops and parties and all these kind of things, and we kind of fill the space with other kinds of bodies and desires and this was very, very successful and satisfying and kind of left the space for a new way of understanding or for let's say diversity or for a wide array of bodies, sexuality, genders, and all of this. And so yes, I would like to close with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan, for your presentation and for sharing this encounter that you curated in Zurich. I think it definitely raises some very interesting questions in the way we talk about sexuality and body and architecture. And I'm really looking forward to our group discussion, which will begin in just a few minutes. So I would invite Sawako and Maria Jose and Madeline and also Inga to come and join back into the call when you're ready. And then we can begin the conversation. Hello.
Sawako, you can activate your microphone, or you just say hotline.
Yeah.
Thank you. You wait for Inge, maybe she will come in a little bit later.
In a few minutes, yes. Okay, here we have. Hello.
Oh, she's on. Maria Jose. Thank you.
Hello. Hi.
Good.
Lovely to see you all.
Yeah,
all of us here together.
Maria Jose. Oh, you have a microphone. Okay. Thank you very much. I think there are a lot of discuss. It was very exciting, very different view, but I think that this ecologies are very wide. They go also on other planets, I will say, with Sawako. And so I don't know what maybe we can start with some question to develop your replay, your talk. And so one, I want to ask you how long it stay your project with the cinema is still working, is still ongoing, it's something active or
no.
Here some of your presentations.
Hello. No. It just it's done already. We did it 1 year ago, and now the cinema turned into a nightclub basically. But we just had a frame of we were there for 1 month, basically, where we had the chance of doing this.
Amazing anyway. So.
Thank you.
I have some questions that maybe I will start with addressing to the whole group, and then afterward I will open it up so you can ask questions to one another. Does that sound okay? Okay, fantastic. So firstly, I think that in looking at all of the different presentations, each of you explored, and utilized very different visual methods, also in terms of your actual presentation here today, but also in terms of your respective architectural or artistic or curatorial practices. So in the case of Sawako, I think that your use of, image generation and artificial intelligence in visualizing the extraterrestrial. In the case of Inga, I think I really noticed your analysis of archival images and photography for Maria Jose and Madeline. Again, this use of video and also engaging with archival images and also photography in this performative aspect. And then finally with Juan, I think that your final presentation, kind of this looking at building plans and also text and the way that this comes to be. So my question is, again, because the symposium is within the context of a master's course for students developing methodologies for thinking about interior architecture, I would ask how the processes or the methods that you have developed in order to address your particular topic have either supported or aided or perhaps at times limited your subject. So what is kind of your relationship to method, if that's not too much of an existential question? And we can start in any order.
Who would like to start? I don't want to start because I just presented to maybe somebody else. But I can also.
Sure, Juan, go ahead.
Should I? I mean, my method, I started. It is extremely theoretical. It was very theoretical in the beginning, and this is something that preoccupies me in that sense. Like, yeah, and so to like, yeah, just how to translate theory to praxis. And for now, you saw that I gave the example of the cinema, and it was basically the cinema was turned into a discursive space. So it was so in a sense, it is still like it was an exhibition in a way. So it's still not fully like the gap to practice is not fully bridged here. I mean, I don't think it is not like providing us fully with a new way of thinking these spaces anew if you read it like this. But then of course we tried to have effective changes that yeah, that turned the building into something else that it was before, and this was basically by opening the door to new actors, to new people, but changing the events that were happening inside that made the meaning shift of the whole building. So that I would say is the main method that we employed, and which proved to be effective. And it didn't, I mean, it just didn't change the architecture itself. So in terms of design, there's very little things that we actually did. So it was more about like changing just, the meaning, just what this whole thing kind of represents and what it stands for, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, for us, I think it will be like as we said as well in the video, we started to going to research together at the port in Rotterdam because we were studying together our masters in the Witwaart in Rotterdam. So it was a way of I was researching the border, and a way for me was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the port to research the border via the port, and then Madeline also was developing her research on trade. And then suddenly we found each other, like, accompany each other to these visits that were like quite extensive. And then we started to like share the material. We were like, we were shooting and recording, right?
Yeah, I think that having kind of tangible experiences is a really important part of our methodology. So going to different sites and speaking to people and trying to gain access, going to archives and like physically handling material, that's been really a way of, as we say in our presentation, like getting closer to our subject matter somehow in a kind of non-linear way, perhaps. I think having that direct relationship or personal relationship has been really important for us.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it's the same for me. And when I think about the methodology, it's not something that very clear comes to mind, but maybe something that you develop and then realize like, okay, this might be a methodology. Because ultimately in artistic research, what I have experienced is that where it kind of differs for my feeling from scientific research is that you can be more subjective, so you can follow leads that you find interesting, which maybe resonate on a very personal level, which sometimes you don't even have the words to describe why, but you just have to follow them. So yeah, if I look back, I developed a methodology that I might even apply in future project, which means like, I think oral history turned out to be very interesting for me because particularly that somebody says something and you all of a sudden it resonates and it triggers things that you might not have found. I mean, this can also be by reading or like finding a quote, as Juan, or something that really resonates and you don't even know why it resonates. But this is something I would encourage students to follow, because this could be a track for developing a methodology. And then how you're going to research, I think it's really depending on what you're researching. So it's different from each project. But you create a certain kind of toolbox with different ways of working.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit Feuerabend against the method, and I like not find of a way how you walking and this. Sorry, go on.
Yes, no, I think this is something that we speak about with the students a lot. Is it's of course about the subject that you study and the kind of ways of thinking about it and kind of acknowledging the literature, but also the way of doing that can in itself become a process of knowledge creation. So thinking very, very critically about how you do things and how different ways of doing things also open up different ways of understanding the topic. Which as I also think in Maria and Madeleine in your presentation, I was thinking a lot about kind of how you were working with the sensorial and talking about infrastructure. So kind of thinking with sensorially while also looking at kind of these this historical reading of the logistics of globalization, etc., and having those two methods exist together at the same time, I think are really important in that they show different channels for the way of looking at the particular topic. So
yeah, made me all of a sudden think about how just experiencing something can be very different from what you say like about visiting a site and reading about the site.
Yes,
pair those ones up. So just having the experiencing through I mean, like having bodily experiences, I realized is something really important for my research. So I don't know, I just had to think about what you were saying and then connecting it to Maria, Jose, and Madeleine's method also is just on one hand, it's combining these two elements. Interesting. By the way, my studio where I'm at right now is in Ruigoord, so I can look at the port of Amsterdam. And I would like to invite you.
So much activity.
Yes. Well, that's the sensorial.
Yeah, I think we've going to sites, but also this kind of the accessing through sounds as well has been really interesting, and also like especially at the ports, like the sense of smell and like different areas being demarcated by different kind of petrochemical smells or the smells of spices, like that has been very, very evocative, I guess, and kind of again like seems to sort of flatten our research between kind of histories, the present, conversations that we've had. It kind of, all of those things get amalgamated through the physical experience of a subject or a site. So.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I can literally step out the door and see the oil tankers. So it has this very Mad Max kind of surroundings, but then the village where we are located it used to be a small farm village. So it's kind of reversed. It seems like the history that this village represent, because it's actually...
Okay, I'm back. I have no idea what just happened. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. But
that's okay. I'm back now. No worries.
You know, with the present and the past, it's like the village that is actually a remnant of a history that was here for a very long time. You know, it's like it was farmland all around. Now it seems that this is, you know, like that the industry has, because it's so huge around the small remnants of this village, it seems reverse, that the village is somehow it's a strange mixture. So if you ever, I don't know if you ever visited Ruigoord, probably, but please come and I can show you around here. And because I've been thinking a lot also about the surroundings, and it's so complicated and huge. So I find it very daring that you take up on this topic.
Yes, I think we get a lot of I think we've been kind of intimidated by trying to enter those sorts of sites in Rotterdam and Amsterdam and actually various other ports in the UK and in Italy as well. But I think it's something that gives us a lot of energy. It gives our practice a lot of energy. Energy is kind of like somehow gaining our entry into.
I guess like this kind of not challenge, but kind of way of getting in through the gateways, or like negotiating like different objects. It's like, you know, people at the port will be like, why will you need this object? And we will be like fascinated by this like piece of cable, and like, you know, all this like negotiation to like get it and like convince them that for us it's important, for other ways that for them it isn't. So all these conversations I think is so interesting. And yes, as like you were saying, like this something that prompts you or like brings you like a huge emotion or sensation, and like it's so important. And also like let your body actually like guide you through.
Yes,
you know, like
quite intuitively.
Yes.
I think sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if we're at the round of asking questions, which maybe
sure, we can absolutely go ahead. Yeah,
I was thinking, Juan, like so how did you make the selection for the artist? I was wondering about the exhibition, because when you think about I mean, like, let's say I've been very much reflecting upon what has been shown. And so this is an interesting process, you know, when you become actually a curator of something and make the decision for, is it then just like, oh, I have friends, or is it like, how did you come up with
collection?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it was so maybe also referring a bit back to the methodology. We first kind of went to a very like we spent a lot of time analyzing this building and developing a position, a kind of curatorial position towards it. And we came to this conclusion that we yeah, that we needed to not subvert it, but like as I said, open the door for other kinds of bodies that didn't inhabit it before. And this were in mostly women, because women were like, you know, being shown on screen as a kind of commodity, just said. So then it was like through talking to, we were talking to Reba Mabry, which one of the artists that we were showing. She's a female dominatrix. I don't know if you know her, but if you don't, you should kind of get into her work. It's really amazing. And we were just talking to her, and she was just also referring to other people, other artists. And then, so this is more like the artists that we invited from outside of Switzerland. But then we also talked to a lot of people that actually, yeah, I don't know, we live there in the street. I mean, we are kind of a bit in the scene of Zurich, also in the night scene, and then we just know the people that, yeah. So indeed, it's friends, and friends of friends. Yeah, we've been, I don't know, I have a lot of friends that are very much into voguing, and then was like, oh, let's just do something there because it makes so much sense. For example, yeah. I just showed, for example, Latina in one of the pictures. She's basically the queen of Langstrasse. She brought dancehall to Zurich. So yeah, also pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? If this is your first, I don't know, I think you did one exhibition. Who know it would grow into something more. If you do several exhibitions, maybe at a certain moment you realize like we need, you know, maybe to reach further than friends. But yeah, I really hear you. Too bad that it couldn't exist longer.
Yeah, this is the way that then I guess design would come into place. Like at some point you would need indeed to change some things, because it's I mean, or not, but we're basically opening up the building, making it more porous. So at some point you could think, okay, what do we do with this kind of system of going in, out, and you know, yeah. So I guess then this design would be the next step potentially.
Yes, I mean, I think it's always interesting to think about. I'm also curating exhibitions and working now on an exhibition at the Funkhaus in Vienna, which is the old broadcasting center of Vienna, where you have these recording studios that were, you know, constructed in the 1970s. And it's always thinking about like the exhibition space now is a passive agent, but then what happens when you're developing a concept around the situation of where you're located? And I also think that's something, Inga, that came up in your presentation about these plants that, you know, were actively involved in forming the exhibition experiences as these also spatial orientation devices, or blocking, you know, kind of obscuring or blocking different, you know, if it was, I think it was a fire extinguisher that you showed, no? Or these things in kind of, what is the, how do we think about the actual physicality of the space that we're inhabiting? And also Juan, you know, developing this concept that was so.
It's not only me, no? Yeah, okay.
Okay. Beautiful.
She's back.
You were gone for 10 seconds or something. Yeah.
No, I was just, is that better? No?
Yeah.
Now it works.
Okay, okay. No, I was just saying that that I think what I kind of a relationship that I saw between Juan, your presentation, and also with Inga, is this sensitivity to what's happening in the exhibition space that you're analyzing. So Inga, in the case of these plants that were these kind of spatial orientating devices, or demarcation devices, or blocking things, and Juan, this attention to the planning of the cinema, and then inviting interventions that were responding to this. I think that also something that I noticed that was really that was sort of a thread between the different presentations was this attention to like intermediation or the intermediary. So this between, and I think that within working with the students at HEAD, we've spoken a lot about this, you know, the different philosophical paradigms and also kind of literal spatial paradigms that separate the interior from the exterior. And then in all of your presentations, in very different ways, you're talking about this between space, so this liminal space in a way. And it also made me reflect on this, that this isn't something that we've really spoken about in a lot of detail, is the intermediary or is this liminal space also a projection, you know, in the sense that we call it that it's between, you know, but what is it between? Or how do we think about this kind of intermediary space? So if this is a projection, or if it's also a tool to kind of challenge the presumption that an interior space exists as separate from like exterior processes or entities, etc. So I just was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about what you think, how you think the idea of intermediation or the intermediary or the liminal or the between, if and how that's been relevant to your research, or how you think about it, or if you think it's important to working with interior architecture.
As you were just saying that, I mean, this is just a thought that's come to mind. I was just thinking about the liminal and all this idea of this kind of intermediary state or place or zone, and the kind of subjectivity of that. So that it's each person perhaps creates their own space, and that they're not so necessarily aligned, or they overlap, or they're kind of messy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it a lot as like this space, or like also like maybe as a moment of like a shift between like the informal and the formal. So it kind of like this moment that can stretch, and like not necessarily physically, but also time wise. But it's like a moment of stretching, and like these gestures, like kind of like overlap in messy ways, and like they become things become another. It's like a transitional space as well, but it can like hold like gestures and moments or times or historical like context, and like that's I guess I see it as like a space of of potentiality, of course, of becoming. I think that's also something we all have kind of talk through.
Yeah, pretty much. For me, the biggest deal here is, and I hope I'm replying to your question, but like, is that these spaces are not designed. Like these spaces kind of appear spontaneously in the gaps of what was intended. So just to talk about the cinema once more, I mean, it was not intended that it became a cruising space and that like men were just, having relationship with each other. It is something that just spontaneously occurred because the conditions were set for it, but for it unintendedly. But so it's of course I'm very interested in this liminality and this undefinition of spaces, because it's where, as you just said, like within this where things can spontaneously happen, and that are that are kind of unintended and not subject to any normativity. But it is very, I mean, difficult to design these things. I mean, because design is just by definition, I find, I mean, maybe this is something we can talk about. It's a normative task. Like, I mean, you're just designing a space and saying, oh, this is a kitchen. So you already imagine what the user would be doing there and how, and this is the task of architects and I guess interior designers as well. So this is the school at ETH it is a huge topic. How do you design for how do you keep things open in a way? Is it possible? Yeah.
Thank you.
I have, yeah, thank you too. I have maybe not something to add besides that. Yesterday, I mean, some of my friends here, he took over the old stables, so he has a horse.
Oh,
It's a bit injured now. We need to take walks. So I was just walking through the port together with Sandor. It's the name of the horse. And these trucks are just going by very fast. It's this in-between space that we just talk about. And then I'm just so happy to have this, his being. I somehow ground myself. And I think when I think about these spaces that indeed are designed for a certain function, and within the Netherlands, I mean, I guess everything has been designed because it's so small and it's been already such a long process, but especially these spaces hasn't been designed for some kind of domesticity for, I guess, humans, or it's it can feel yeah, just so fictional in a way, and it's very interesting. I mean, it's really triggering in many ways. And what I noticed, what's happening in cities is that a lot of elements that would be part of the cities before, like prisons or like a harbor, they moved out of cities. So the experience of actually this being part of our data are coming from, or how things are produced. And yeah, I think that comes to mind, the absurdity of things, like how there's not really a connection to something you might eat or something you might sit on or something it's just, where is this coming from? Like, how do I need to physically relate to, so yeah, that's maybe something experience. And that's why I find it so daring that you work with these spaces, because it is so I mean, I've been trying to put my head around it for so long, because my mom grew up in this area on a small farm. So I know this very well, this change of the landscape and the globalization and the effect on that on the landscapes. But every time I'm so overwhelmed with the how can you get around, like things are and then being shipped. Yeah, so I get a bit off track, but I'm trying to kind of emphasize this feeling of what I experience being in this space.
I also think thank you, Inga, for your comment. And I think it's very interesting in looking at the ways that, intermediaries or, in between systems are visualized. And I went to a conference about this theme at the KTH in Stockholm 2 years ago, which was about what does it mean when you visualize infrastructure. So if it's like logistic, like what, is it about showing the cable or showing the mechanics, or like how do we think about different strategies for the visualization of liminality, and adopting different techniques. And this is why I think that, going back to methodology, what was interesting about your presentation, Maria and Madeleine, specifically, is how you were kind of intermixing different modes as you were visualizing, the infrastructure. Like, it wasn't, just showing it as it was, but there was a kind of involvement of yourself and your bodies.
Mm.
And
I think, oh, sorry.
yeah, no, I'm done. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it is, as Inga, as you were saying, about this kind of the enormity and the scale of this industry, and the kind of the smallness of one's individual self and that one can feel in those environments, and actually finding those small tangible items, the radio scanner, the cable, the
conversation.
Exactly, like those are the things that kind of make it manageable in a way, because otherwise it's impossible to even gain any sense of holding on to it,
yeah. But also, I mean, I was thinking also on like, because for this presentation, we added like these intertitles of like these categories or like kind of like sections of the film. And like for us at the beginning, when we started to work on this project, like almost not 4 years ago, like 3 years ago, it was like we had like all our images and videos and sounds and like research was like, okay, let's just put it together in the table and like let's start to like do associations with the images that we just see and like with the sounds, and then like name them, like putting them a name. And like sometimes obviously we will like get like funny names, like I don't know, there is one that is called like Smoky Petroleum. I don't know, like I don't know, because it like that was like the emotional, like the sense, no, that we had from that sound. So I don't know, it's kind of, I think it's so interesting for me to think that merging like research and then like the way of categorizing, it has been really important, and without not always like alluding to like a concept, like a bigger concept, trying to conceptualize the machines or like the like the representation of this industry, but also just alluding to our senses and like our ways of relating to that in daily life as well.
I was also interested by what Inge said before. I mean, I don't know if it was so intentional, but you were talking about your family moving from the rural to the urban and like to the countryside, to the city, and I just thought that if it's about like this, we're talking about high infrastructures that are hidden and that are kind of serving a kind of front stage, let's say. Then for me it's quite crucial also to talk about this kind of urban rural rift, because like these things are mainly located in the countryside and they're kind of serving the city where kind of life is happening, and then you just kind of keep everything that you don't want to see or everything that is kind of producing, making this life possible in the in the hinterlands and the
yes. And I was thinking so much, Inga, also about you mentioned that plants as kind of being this moment where the interior and the exterior intermix with one another. And I was thinking about your presentation while I was listening to Maria and Madeline's as well, with these, massive production facilities, and then was thinking about the growth of the houseplant economy, so the actual these mass kind of industrial nurseries that produce plants in these ways. And so the kind of global capitalist systems or like material systems that are producing these devices that then kind of symbolically dissolve this interior and exterior space. And that seemed, I don't know, it was just an idea that came to my head as a threading point between these two practices.
Yeah, also a lot to say, I think, about that, because of course, when you call like nature, like looking at a plant in a pot, which can't connect to peers, and when you look around plants, or when you look at plants and trees, of course, they are never alienated by themselves, they work always like collectively. So, but then at the same time, because I've thought a lot about, and Roberto kind of mentioned that already earlier, there's been, of course, like these are tropical plants, they stem from colonial history. But then when they actually appear, I have here a plant also in my studio, you do kind of live with it. And it also opens up a sort of portal, to actually have a relationship. And so thinking about these plants in the exhibition spaces, which is what is kind of strange, especially in the stedelijk, or why it really caught my attention, is that in 1938 they actually tried to democratiseren. Sorry, I can't present of the arts. And yeah, so they try to, I mean, a part of that was actually to remove the ornaments, or at least to, because these ornaments, of course, reflect to very, like, the Renaissance, and then they paint the walls white, and so kind of to make it this idea, right, of the white cube, but it's also behind it is also kind of to have this common, let's say, common ground. All very problematic, but okay, that's then the goal. And then why are plants being reintroduced into the space? I find that a very interesting gesture. And I also find it, like, if I just more look at, like, okay, maybe it's an experiment. Maybe you try some things. Maybe you try to pair some things. I really appreciate it for that reason of, like, how can we keep staying connected, to, even though we're alienated, even though, it's still maybe an attempt to create some kind of relationship. Although, of course, when you look at it or when you read about the history, it's also so painful and problematic, but at the same time, on right now in the moment, you can still have a relationship and a connection that could be meaningful or even hopeful. And actually I wrote, reflecting on the talk yesterday, about with Leonie. I don't know if everybody watched it yesterday, but something came to mind about a story that my mom told, because they were living in farm close by here. And then in the summer, when the cows would go into the fields, they would move their living room into the stables, because they had a very small house and they were with lots of people. And the stables were much cooler and were much spacier. So I just had to think about that also, like what that would mean, like that interior of a stable and you would live in it. I don't know. It's just all interesting. I'm just kind of looking for connection. How can we stay connected, and not be so alienated, even in offline or online spaces. As I say, I'm really looking for empathy in these spaces, or even what you mentioned, right, in these very industrial surroundings. Like, I think, yeah, but that's just my personal search also.
I think it's more than personal.
Yeah.
Person by yourself, but it's very nice. I don't know, when I was listening to all of you and stay a little bit in the background, but I don't know if you know Alan Sekula, how much I know him. No, so I'm very happy, Matlan and Jose, because it's very special. But for example, it was this American photographs, very particular photographs. It was more social critic to the photography. That is incredible books called Fish.
Fish Story.
Already know and such. And so that's also a connection. But for example, he wrote a super interesting article about the Bank of Canada. And he talked about plants there inside. It's a very important building of Arthur Erickson. That's the most important Canadian architect of the 20th century. And this was interesting because it was somebody that was from the far east of Canada, and then became like it was the first archistar of really on the 70s, one of the cover on Times. Now it's discovered has been a very nice exhibition on CCA about this. But people are not looking in a critical way. It's now there's discovered homosexuals, so there's a lot of discussion about that. But it is this hypercritical essay by Alan Sekula, and about the way plants are used inside the Bank of Canada in Ottawa. And it was something that's supposed to connect all of you and send and I think that's between scale approach, that's very important. I mean, it's everything is interconnected. I mean, in that in that essay, Sekula really mentioned the fact that the bank, the form of the bank, and also the presence of a nature. This is part of Canadian identity as it's presented officially. It's a way to show that the resource of the land in Canada are presented there like a capitalist state. And it's very deep, it's very simple, but it's hard now that we are so specialized that we are looking to very small arguments, etc., to find something that is appears and it's intended to connect things. There's another, I don't know, but probably you know, a famous article against the Bilbao building, Bulgaria, and it's really connecting to the ship transportation. You know, Bilbao, it's a huge, it's very important harbor where the fortune, what's coming from fishing, and also the platform for shipping recently, etc. And it's these kind of things has to be looked in this way. I think that's also. I mean, it's not in each of you, but the way we find you on the screen, it's fun. It's the way to connect them. Also, if it seems very far, and maybe I don't know. I'm more concerned. I really like where. I don't know. There is Olivia Rodrigo that says she doesn't date anymore. When she dates somebody, one of the first things she asked is, "Do you want to go to Mars?" And if you, I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, and if they say yes,
a way to see if she have to continue go out with this guy or not. Okay,
it's funny. I don't know, in the last 5 minutes, maybe you have more questions for one another?
yeah, we can also finish a little bit before if you are tired. And so it was pretty intense. It was a very good session. Let me see. Okay, yeah, I think.
No. Well, then I would just take a moment to say thank you to all of you for taking the time to share your practices and your work with all of us, which I think has been very inspiring for me, and I'm sure for everyone watching, on thinking about different approaches to studying interior architecture and different case studies and things. So it's been really, really a pleasure to listen to all of you. And if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to add, then just get in contact with us. And yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Ciao.
See you soon.
So,
Bye.
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 Ciao. Okay. See you later.
See you. Bye-bye.
I think I will see you. I hope to come for the final discussion because I also run to.
Okay.
Okay.